Hi there, Nick with 30minutes here, and today I'm going to show you 5 different techniques to speed paint a mini in 30 minutes or less. Let's do this. Let's lay down some rules first. I'm starting out with 5 based and primed minis, all from various box sets from Games Workshop. And I have a speed painting technique lined up for each mini that suits its particular style. For each mini, I'm going to start this timer right here and start working as fast as I can. And I'll only be pausing the timer once, and there's a pretty good reason for that, which we'll cover here in a little bit. Alright, let's get cracking with technique number 1, slap chop. You know it, love it, or love to hate it, this is the slap chop painting technique. That's right, the internet sensation made famous by Rob the Honest Wargamer. Start out with a mini prime black. Load up a small makeup brush with gray. Out of all 50 shades, I go with this one, right about 60% white and 40% black. Go all over the mini with this, only avoiding places where the light wouldn't fall. After that, load up another smaller dry brush with white and go over just the places where you want people to look. On this model, I go with the face, shield, and a few other parts in the model where light would hit it the strongest. This took longer than I thought it would, taking up about 4 minutes of the allotted 30. But don't worry, speed is the slap chop game, so the rest of the mini should go pretty quick. What you want to do next is use contrast style paints to do base coats all over the model. You know the types, contrast from GW, whatever the new Vallejo one is called, or speed paint from Army Painter, which is what I'm using here. I did green all over the body, and even wet blended some lighter green on the face and his tum-tum to give some slight color variation. Red and orange were wet blended on the shield and armor bits. This technique is amazing because the paints are translucent and allow the underpainting to show through. The brighter parts of the underpainting become vibrant highlights and darker paints stay nice and dark, but colored the way you want. Around the 15-minute mark, we have all the base coats established, and I have some time to highlight up some areas. To do this, I mixed in a bit of yellowy off-white into the different speed paints, and used that mixture to highlight up as normal. I also used some bright red to highlight up the shield and armor, and some straight yellow-white for the shield teeth and random bones around the model. At the 29-minute mark, I pulled out some gray 42.0 and called it good. Coming in at 29 minutes and 43 seconds, we have a slap-chopped Cruel Boy. I gotta be honest, I'm really happy with the way this turned out for the amount of time spent. Cruel Boys are an excellent example for this technique. A nice variety of not too smooth textures really go well with the slap-chop method. Other armies this would be good for would be Tyranids, Gloomspite Gits, and really anything with a nice variety of textures. But I really wouldn't recommend this for any smooth armored folks like Space Marines, Necrons, Stormcast, or, anything else in armor. But I got a technique that'll go really well with one of those. Speaking of which, here comes technique number 2, Highlander. The Highlander technique is all about doing one color, doing it well, and doing it fast. I start out with a black prime and then airbrush the full mini with a dark version of the model's main color, in this case, red. Then I did a zenithal spray from above with the true main color, again, in this case, a brighter red. Oh yeah, we're going with Blood Angels here. You don't have to use an airbrush for this technique though. If you were to find a dark and light version of any color in a rattle can, it would work just as well. Either way, you should be left with a zenithal style base coat of your color of choice. About 5 minutes in, and with 95% of this model basically done, we can already start on the details, and have plenty of time for it. I used a dark gray to hit various parts of the model that will either be black or hit with metallic paint later on. Then I painted the pauldron trim and glorious chest bird with gold paint. Then I used an aluminum metallic cover over the chainsaw teeth and all the other random metal bits around. At 25 minutes, I brought out the Dry Faster 5000 to make sure everything is locked down. Hair dryers are key for speed painting. Nothing slows you down more than waiting for a wash to dry. Get a hair dryer. And then I pulled out the liquid talent in a bottle that is Nuln Oil. This was applied all over the model and base to homogenize the paint job and add in some extra shadows to the recesses. To avoid pooling and coffee staining, I gave this wet boy a few dabs with a paper towel, wicking off the extra wash. After drying him again with a Dry Faster 5000, I had about a minute left, and I used this to do some quick dirty highlighting with the bright red from earlier. I stopped the clock at 30 minutes exactly, and here's what I have. I did take some extra time to hit the base rim with some gray 8.1, but don't hold that against me. Overall, I'm very happy with this paint job, but out of all the techniques shown today, this one could definitely use some more time. I think another 15 minutes to do some highlighting on the black bits, add some sort of warm wash to the gold, and maybe doing some simple freehand on the pauldrons would have really done this mini well. The Highlander technique is perfect for any armies that are largely consistent of a single colored armor, but obviously this wouldn't be the best speed painting technique for armies with a variety of colors and textures, so basically avoid anything that slap chopping is good for. Also, it's probably not the best for any metallic-y armor armies, but for that we have technique number 3, Iron Man. The Iron Man technique is super similar to the Highlander, but quite a bit faster, so we'll have some extra time at the end to do some special techniques. And of course, the Necron Warrior is the perfect showcasing of the Iron Man painting technique. Start with a black prime and then do a zenithal coating from dark to light steel or silver. Basically a dark metal all over, and then use a bright silver or chrome from the top. Again, airbrushes are not needed. If you can find a dark and bright metal color in spray paint form, this will work great for you. By the way, even though I'm showing this on a silvery, steely metallic model, you could easily use this technique for golds, coppers, bronzes, any type of metallic. This should work great. Only 2 minutes in, I had a base metallic coat in place and used a dark gray to hit the base texture, knocking out that metallic shine. Then I did some quick highlighting with a bright silver, almost chrome paint. This step I don't really think was needed though, and I'll explain why in just a sec. I used the same dark gray from the base on some of the non-metallic parts of the gun. And at the 9-minute mark, I brought out some green to lay down a foundation for some OSL, or object source lighting, on the eyes, gun tube thingy, and gun balls. Before we can finish the OSL, let's take out some Nuln Oil and thoroughly slather it all over the model, adding some deep shadows into all the nooks and crannies of this space skeleton's body. Once adequately dosed, bring out the Dry Faster 5000 to dry it as quick as possible. Now with 22 minutes on the clock, we can get back to that OSL. I continually add brighter and brighter green, mixing my base green in with yellow to brighten it up, but retain some saturation. Even though I chose OSL for this Necron, you could easily switch to something completely different for your army. Maybe some more intense weathering and rust for a Chaos Space Marine army, or adding in some freehand to the shields of Stormcast. No matter what you choose, you got the time. Once I was relatively happy with that, I brought out a dry brush and brushed on the brightest silver color I could find. This step kind of makes the previous metallic highlighting redundant, so I think I'd skip that next time and save a couple minutes. At around 28 minutes, I hit the base with some gray 3.14 and called this one good. As you can see, the Iron Man technique is a very fast way to get models to tabletop standard and leave yourself enough time to add in some special effects. I think Necrons are the absolute best case scenario for this technique, but other standout armies would be Stormcast, Grey Knights, Admech, if you avoid the ones with cloth, and Karajan Overlords. What armies would I avoid? Well, basically any army that isn't entirely made out of metal. Come on, this one's easy. But you know what's even easier? Technique number 4, Grimey Wimey. The Grimey Wimey technique was inspired by a recent Tabletop Minions video where Uncle Adam had been experimenting with simple paint jobs and oil paints. And I think this technique is perfect for any Chaos Space Marines, but especially Death Guard. But it does have one caveat, which we'll get to in just a sec. I started out with a Zenithal Prime, then I hit all the armor bits with a thinned down mix of brown and yellow to give the Plague Marine its iconic off-white hue. From here on, we're just doing base coats. No highlighting, no shading. We'll do all that with one step right at the end. I wet blended some red to a fleshy color on the tentacles, then brown wet blended to yellow on the various unsightly growths. Some nurgly green was used on the armor trim and other various bits of armor, and then dark gray for the gun and all the bits that will be metallic. Then I hit all the bits that should be made from steel with steel, and all the bits that are coppery with copper. All easy stuff. And we're ready to mix up this technique's signature sauce. Oil goop. Wash. Goopy wash, you'll see. I mixed up some burnt umber and burnt sienna into a smelly oil concoction that is thin but still much thicker and more opaque than a standard oil wash. This was then slathered all over the model, hitting every single part of the mini and the textured base as well. Once that is done with 25 minutes on the clock, I hit the pause button. You see, the main drawback for oils is its drying times, and this required 24 hours to fully dry.
24 hours later.
With the paint dry, I can finally show you what makes this technique so cool. I dip some cotton swabs in mineral spirits and start to gently rub it against the model. And would you look at that, the oil paints reactivate and start to pull away. Doing this across the model, I can remove the oil paints, leaving base coats showing through, but with a deep, grimy shadow left behind in the recesses. This is so cool and so easy. This step didn't take long at all, and the total working time on the Mini was a mere 29 minutes. I let the Mini dry for another day, hit the base room with a few coats of gray 82.11, and we have this. A Grimey Wimey Plague Marine that looks like it has been through some action. Yeah, he looks like he's been through some shit. Probably literally. I think this technique is fantastic for anything Nerdle, but also any army that you want to look grimdark. Space Marines, Cruel Boys, Necrons, Stormcast, anything that you want to give that gritty grimdark style to. And really the only armies you want to avoid is anything that needs to look clean and pure. So probably avoid Elves and Eldar, but who really likes them anyway? But if you do want a technique that leaves your Mini looking simple and clean, well, get ready for technique number 5. Pop Pop. The last and my personal favorite technique of the day is the Pop Pop, which is all about some quick and dirty OSL. Dubbed the Pop Pop because we're going to use only 2 contrasting colors and focus on how light from 2 imaginary sources would cascade over the Mini. This model is going to be painted as if it were being lit by a bonfire at night. So our first objective is to make this poor soul look like it's being illuminated by moonlight. To do so, I'm going to lay down a base coat of Payne's Gray through the airbrush. Then I hit the model top down with a desaturated gray blue. You know, the type of blue that space Vikings would use 40,000 years in the future. Yeah, that kind of blue. With that in place, it's time to start working on the light cast from the off-screen bonfire. Or maybe it's the red glow from a town set ablaze. You can really let your imagination go wild with this technique. I used a dark red paint through the airbrush here, starting at the bottom and letting it fall off in a gradient towards the top of the model. I sprayed this really only from one angle, making it look like the bonfire was close. Maybe it's like here. So its light would only be hitting the front and bottom of the Mini, and falling off as we move up the model. We also aren't going to hit the back side of the model at all. So, you know, like, if the bonfire's on front, the light's not going to hit its back. That makes sense, right? By the way, you might be able to do this with rattle cans, but maybe not. Out of all the techniques today, this is the only one where I don't really think doing it with rattle cans would work out well. But prove me wrong. The rest of the paint job was simple. I highlighted these 2 colors appropriately, orange for the fiery parts, focusing on the parts of the Minis that are closest to the fire off screen, then a pale blue-white for all the parts of the Mini lit only by the moon. This is just one example of 2 contrasting lights. Maybe you want to have a Mini lit with 2 neon lights, like a scene from a cyberpunk city. Or perhaps a dark Mini lit only from below with glowing mushrooms in a dark cave. Really, the possibilities are endless. I finished the highlighting with plenty of time to spare, just below 17 minutes on the clock, and decided to break out a black oil wash to do some pin lining. Why oil wash? Well, let me show you. This stuff has almost no surface tension, so it slips down into the cracks and crevices easily. Unlike standard acrylic washes, this stuff isn't going to stain the surrounding areas if you're careful and place the brush directly into the recesses you want it to flow to. After finishing the model, I splotched some of the black wash on the ground as well. Hit the base with some gray 420.0, and called it good just 24.5 minutes in. I love the Pop Pop technique and think it's a fantastic option for any single figures, board game minis, or display pieces. But I don't really know how well it would work on like a full army. It may be a little weird if like all the minis look like they're being lit from below. I don't know, I'd have to try. So which technique was your favorite? Let me know your vote in the comments below, and whoever wins is going to get a 1,000-point army speed painting video. It'll be fun. Thank you so much for watching. A huge shout out and thank you to all my wonderful patrons. I really wouldn't be able to do this without you guys. Until next time, y'all, stay healthy and take care.